Welcome to my World History Notes, where today I've been discussing the Cold War. Just some things that I want to say to start. I want to explain a little bit before I bring up some couple of people that I want to mention today and events. The question is, why would you be opposed to communism? From each according to his ability, to each according to his need. That sounds great. Voluntarily, everybody working together, everybody taking care of each other. That sounds wonderful. Um, However, it's not realistic. And the real history of communism, as I've said before, there were always communist movements and thoughts and philosophers throughout history. Ancient Greece, Rome, Persia, Cromwell's England, that kind of thing. The French Revolution made a political reality, and also made it a religion. Um, what happened is the idea that people would voluntarily do this began to hit Karl Marx began to realize they're not. So he began talking in the 1840s, according to Billington and his minds about the revolutionary principle in the 1880s or 1800s, about people that fire the minds of men. It's called Billington. Um, he began to realize there had to be the people, the workers, the people weren't going to do this voluntarily, because we are motivated by self-interest. And as things get better, the people weren't so as angry as they had been, and the oppressions were lifted from them, and slowly, and workers in capitalism, and capitalism produced great fruit and prosperity for people, and they were about better off than their ancestors had been financially and with physical things. But so he began to realize that there would be a need to be a dictatorship, a dictator, which wasn't looked at as that bad back then. There would need to be a dictator to lead people into this, a dictatorship for the proletariat, calling it a dictatorship of the proletariat. So Marx began to believe that there would have to be a dictatorship that would have to take and seize power in order to lead the sheeple into this bright new future. And of course, Lenin believed that too. So what happens is, communists denies the value of the individual. Um, it is a collectivist idea, meaning that you derive your identity from the state, you derive your identity from the group. You're not an individual. That human rights such as free speech, things like that are irrelevant. They're in the way. They're symbols of the oppression, and so traditional marriage, traditional morality, it goes out the window. Nobody should own private property, or as Klaus Schwab and his gang, the World Economic Forum, say, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy about it. Communism is a wicked, evil scheme, and proof of that is that communists killed 110 million plus of their own people in their own countries during the 20th century. It is, and it's going to kill a lot more. It's the belief that the elite knows what's best, and you simply have nothing to say about it, or should have nothing to say about it. Just rubber stamp when you go to the polls and elect us. Show us that you're confident that we're going to do everything we need to do, and just shut up and do what you're told. And people are rebelling in China. They're rebelling in Iran, and they rebel in America too. So you'll communism is a pernicious, wicked doctrine, and you can vote in communists, but in 2 or 3 generations, your children's children's children will have to shoot them out because you won't be able to get rid of them. Okay. So anyway, let's get on to today on the Cold War. Fascinating stuff I'm learning, and really happy to learn it. I want to talk to you about a communist today, important person, I think, Agnes Smedley. And she's a very interesting person. She was a journalist. She was American. She was a journalist, a writer, an activist. She supported independence movements from colonialism. That's great. She wrote a book. It was an autobiographical novel called Daughter of the Earth in 1929. And she she's also very big on communist Chinese the communist China. She really wanted to promote the communist China. So in 1941, she relocated from where she'd been living to Washington, D.C. to advocate for China's communist revolution. She wrote several books on China's revolution. She was an influential voice in support of the Chinese communists on public forums and NBC radio. Her 1944 book, Battle Hymn of China, was widely read and reviewed. During the 1940s, she lived at Yaddo, Yaddo, a writer's colony in upstate New York, and lived at times with a person named Edgar Snow, which will be important later. In 1947, though, excuse me, she was accused of espionage by General MacArthur and followed by the FBI. Feeling pressure, she left the U.S. in the autumn of 1949, and she died in Britain in 1950 after surgery for an ulcer. So her ashes are buried in the Revolutionary Cemetery in Beijing. It's Baba Ocean. So she was a very, very important uh, individual, communist individual in the 1940s, especially. Had a big voice. Now, in July 5th of 1945, on the same day as the British general elections I talked about before, the Polish Provisional Government of National Unity that the Soviets created in late June was recognized by Britain and the United States. Big mistake, big mistake. By knuckling under to Stalin, the Western democracies began prolonging the Cold War and the suffering of millions of people under communist tyranny. So, just want to make a couple of statements about that. Um, the Polish government of national unity, they had promised free and fair elections in Poland. They were postponed until the communists were sure they could control the election process. And that's what they do. In the meantime, they increased repression of opposition members who were bribed, threatened, murdered. And the goal of the communists was to dominate the country and to do Stalin's bidding, and nothing was going to stop them. They tested their control on June 30th, 1946, by actually falsifying the results of an election and claiming almost 70% support they did not have. They had two things they did that were important were a nationalization decree and a 3-year plan. They gave government control over every enterprise that employed more than 50 people, and 90% of the country's industry was controlled by the government. So that's what happens under communism, and that's what happened to Poland. So we'll stop there, and I hope that you'll dig into this a little bit and pick it up, and then we'll go to some more things. Another preeminent communist and another part of the timeline as we get further into this. And we have much to discuss that affected the Cold War and affects us today. Thank you very much for listening.